Welcome to episode 2 of Fanatical Leica, brought to you from sunny Highland Park, Los Angeles. Today we're going to talk about Profoto and Leica together, high-speed sync, and just some pitfalls and what's usable and what works, what doesn't, and I'll attempt to make it interesting. We'll see how that goes. So here we have the gear we're going to be using today, Leica Sl2 with the 50mm Summicron, Profoto A10. This is actually the model intended for Fujifilm, but we're going to be using it off camera with the Profoto Connect Pro, the new Leica specific model. And just for a little color, here's the M11 with the Light Lens Lab 35 f2 8 element in the lovely Safari green, my favorite. So I just want to show you real quick the settings on the remote here. The only thing that's maybe different that on mine, maybe versus your setup, is I'm just in Air 2 mode so that the A10 can be fully controlled from here. You know, the power settings, not just relative up one stop or down one stop, etc. if you're in Air 1 mode. X-Sync is off, and there's no special settings on there. One thing to note is that if I change the shutter speed on the camera, you'll see it move in and out of high-speed sync mode. So if I drop the shutter speed down to, say, 200th of a second, which is, I believe, the native maximum sync speed, we no longer see that illuminated on the remote. As soon as I bump up to, say, 250, 500th of a second, it's now displaying, high-S on the remote, and if you don't see that, that maybe indicates something's not happening right. Lastly, just checking on the A10 that the sync mode is set to auto FP / high-speed sync, and that's really all we need to worry about to get things going. So I'll walk through these test images real quick just to show you what I'm getting. Again, my setup may be wildly different from yours. I shoot with flash on manual, and this was really just to see if high-speed sync works in my setup. I can imagine situations where this wouldn't be sufficient, or if you're relying on TTL, or you need higher f-stop outdoors, overpowering the sun, etc. So make of it what you will, but again, this is just a demonstration and how I might use it in my studio setup. So starting here, we have, again, this is the SL2 and a 50mm lens. All these are at ISO 400, and it's the little Profoto A10 flash. I have a B10X, which is B10X Plus, which is 500 watt seconds. I didn't get into that for this video. I haven't really tested it out with the Leica yet, so maybe that'll be for another time. But this is at f5.6, 1/500th of a second, so we're into high-speed sync territory. Once you go over 200th of a second on the SL2, the Profoto remote displays that it's in high-speed sync mode. It just sort of lets you know. And I'm just going to step through a couple of these. Again, these are both 500th of a second, just moving the flash around a little bit. Again, this is pointed at this guitar, and you can tell from that very defined shadow. There'll be some bounce images in a second. And what happened here? So this is going up to, so these are both, so this is trying to bounce it off the ceiling without changing anything else. And the A10 is at near maximum power. So we can see we're rapidly losing power once we get into these higher speed sync times. Again, I think that's bouncing it off the wall. Similar result, just not enough power. And here it's bouncing off the side of the wall. Again, a little bit better, but we're not getting nearly what we can from the flash, once we're at this shutter speed. Here I opened up to f4, a little bit brighter. That's bouncing off the ceiling. You can see just the soft shadow. And then here I opened up to 2.8, and now it's working pretty nicely for for just a soft, even light. I could work with this image, no problem. Again, still at 500th of a second, f2.8, ISO 400. And this is redirecting. This is still at f2.8 with the flash more on axis. Now, this is where it gets interesting. It jumps up. I jumped up to 2,000th of a second here at f2.8, and again we're losing power. But I could imagine shooting at f800 and making this work. But yeah, the power starts to drop off precipitously as shutter speed goes up, past 200th of a second. This is at 4,000th of a second. What's interesting to me is there's no issues with the actual sync. I mean, the sync is working fine. There's no blackout, bars on the image. It's just power rapidly diminishing. This is at 4,000th of a second, f2.8, more on axis, a little bit more. If you could shoot on axis, if you didn't need a bounced, really soft look, you could, bump this up to 800 to 1600, and that would work just fine. Here's at 4,000th of a second with it fully on axis at f2.8. We're still at ISO 400. So in some situations that might work fine, and that's a very fast shutter speed. I was pleasantly surprised that worked. Same, just playing around with light position. Here we are at 6,400th of a second, f2.8, ISO 400, again with on-axis flash, but I didn't realize it would sync that fast. Anyway, surprised. And yeah, so that's what I got. So, what I take away from this is once you pass that native sync speed into high-speed sync territory, each increase in shutter speed is going to decrease your flash output because the flash is essentially strobing, and you're only getting a smaller and smaller fraction of those strobes as you go up in shutter speed. But knowing I could shoot at 6,400th of a second at a reasonable ISO, 6 feet away from a subject with this is pretty cool. So that's those examples. Okay, so here are a few outdoor examples showing the Profoto A10 in a Profoto 2.7 foot click softbox, which is just above and to the left of the camera, about 3 feet away. Just balancing ambient light with the flash. These are all shot at 1/500th of a second or faster. The first one here is without the flash, just dialing in ambient light exposure. And you can see the camera is fairly dark and a lot of it is in shadow. We step to the next one. We now have the flash active. Now there's obviously some spill onto the background. The flash wasn't very far away from the wall either, but you can still see sunspots on the right hand of the image. And the lens is much more evenly illuminated. You have a nice highlight from the softbox. I'm just playing with different power settings, and I was hand holding the Sl2 for this, moving around to various positions just to play with framing, and adjusting the power on the A10 manually to see what provided the best balance. This is probably the brightest image of the bunch, and there's much more light on the background, but still blending in some of the ambient light in the top right hand for some texture. I've been informed by my 8-year-old that I say the word and way too frequently, so if I'm speaking slowly, it's because I'm trying to overcome this verbal tic. I hope this was at least mildly informative, partially entertaining, and applies to your use case in some scenarios. Stay tuned for more. Thanks.